How do you pick the best subject line for your marketing emails? It's a question we got here at Email Copy Boss, and actually we get it a lot. So if that's something that you're struggling with or something that you just want to get a little better at, I've got a couple ideas I think will help. Now, we've talked about it in a lot of different places. So this this video won't cover every conceivable thing, but we want to talk about a couple of ideas that I don't think I've shared widely elsewhere, and maybe you haven't heard from anyone else. So let's tackle the first thing first. There's no single recipe, no single formula that's guaranteed to get you the best open rate across the board, regardless of your industry, etc. So anyone who tells you that there is misleading you and oversimplifying reality in a way that's detrimental. It's going to hurt your results. So kind of stay away from that. What you need to do, what we all need to do, is test a lot of different ideas. And they need to be markedly different from each other when you A/B split test, so that you can learn what kind of things work, what kind of things don't work for your specific list. Because every list is different. Industries are different, but not only that, even if you're comparing to a peer, they brought people onto their list in a different way. They have different brand recognition, name recognition in the space. They have different relationship with the readers. So you can't assume that everything will be equal across the board, or what you learn from him automatically transfers to your list. So that's rule number one, or idea number one for picking the best subject line, is to test a lot and test things that are different. Next thing is, I just said don't pay attention or don't depend on your competitors or peers, but you should be watching what they're doing. The most successful people in your space, or the most successful organizations in your space, as far as you can tell, you kind of should, you might already do this, should be watching what they do to see what it is that they're doing. And you can learn what they think works. And if you know them to be good testers, you can see what they have found to be some of the more successful tactics and emotions that they play on and ways of doing it. Especially if you see repeated themes or repetitive patterns, you can kind of learn something from that you can test for yourself. Now, like I said, you test it. You don't know for sure that it will work. It might, and it might not. But this gives you an idea to test. Now, here's an idea that you may not have thought of. Have two different or multiple different email addresses subscribe to the same list, because they're probably, I shouldn't say probably. If they're split testing subject lines, you can only see one at a time if you're subscribed with one email address. If you have two or three, you increase your chance of seeing both sides of that test. And if you can see what they're testing, it'll give you ideas for what you can test. So that's just an idea. Very few people do it. It's a good way of doing competitive research to help you get more ideas and learn something about your competitors and your potential audience, I would say. When it comes to subject lines, though, specificity is, let me say this, there's a balance that you have to strike between specificity and curiosity. I won't even say that. You can write super specific headlines, and sometimes those are really going to work well. So if you say 13 exercises to lose 15 pounds in the next 30 days, it's very specific. It's promising a very specific result, and telling you specifically it's through exercise, not through any machine or whatever. So it's very specific, and the reader knows what they're going to get into. So you should definitely be trying specificity in your subject lines. Like I said, that's not always going to work, but a lot of times it will. And you can always change up to keep variety in your inbox, so people don't get bored with you. But specificity is an important idea to try. I really think specific copy works really well. But in subject lines, if it's too predictable, if the reader thinks they know what you're going to say, you're going to be decreasing your response. So specificity versus, on the other side, curiosity. Now, a lot of people will tell you curiosity is the number one way of getting emails opened. And I tend to agree, but these days there's so many competing messages in the inbox, and people are so jaded with marketing messages from most people. Not you, you're smarter than most people. But, they're so used to seeing these things. A lot of times curiosity it doesn't make them curious, or it's too far out there where they don't connect with it, or they just don't believe you're going to tell them anything interesting. You're just glossing it over, or prettying it up to make it seem like I need to open this, and they'll be disappointed when they open. But that is something you need to try. So like an example that I saw very recently, Mark Cuban says, this is not exactly word for word, but Mark Cuban says this will make the first trillionaires, something like that. So you have what's going to make the first trillionaires? Who's going to be richer than Bill Gates or Carlos Slim, whoever is the richest guy in the world today? What is it that could be so powerful to create people who are not trillionaires yet? They'll be trillionaires based on this. Things like that, or, there's something strange going on in this building. Weird things like that. Curiosity is fun to play with. It keeps your readers guessing. And if they feel like they have to know what you're teasing, they'll want to open the email. Just be careful that you're not sucking them in with curiosity, that you don't pay off in the body copy, or at least you intensify that and pay it off on the other side of a click through the email. So there's those. A third kind of tactic that you can use and should try, we're seeing a lot more of it these days, is personal sounding messages. Now, they could be something super personal like, hey, Donnie, or did you see this, Donnie? Or something like that. And those sort of things, if you have that kind of a relationship with your list, they may work really well. I've said it a bunch of times. You've heard it before. President Obama, when he was going for re-election, his best performing email subject line, period, as I understand it, was, hey, just hey. But people feel like, I know Barack, we're tight, we're boys. And you probably read everything that he says. If you're on that list, it's because you're pegged as a donor. So that sort of a message, or that sort of a subject line, will work for that audience in that space. When I get them from other people, I feel like, well, you don't know me enough to address me on that personal level, so it doesn't work. But you can go a little bit, pull it back a little bit. And one that I saw recently was, I never really say these things in public. So it's not personal as in I'm addressing you personally, but I'm disclosing something about myself personal that you may really be curious about. So you don't say that in public. Why don't you say that in public? So there's a curiosity, but it's based on personality, on my personality as the sender. One that we wrote at Email Copy Boss recently that worked pretty well was, I'm not usually embarrassed, but this kind of got me. Or another one that did even better, it's close to 50% open rate, was, oh crap, I forget it now. I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about it. Oh, I will deny it if you tell anyone this, I'll deny it. So it's just, it sounds personal, like I'm embarrassed. I'm a little bit embarrassed by this. So something possibly shameful in here. There's an implication of a personal story, which people like. And that sort of a thing we found works really well, as long as you don't overdo it and as long as it's appropriate for your relationship with that list member. It's not going to work. Your concrete mixer guy may not be able to do that the same way that your financial advisor could do that, who may not be able to do it the same way as your favorite comedian can do it, who may not be able to do it the same way that your presidential candidate can do it. But keep that in mind, that personal stuff works well in some circumstances. And you should try it. We're testing specificity, we're testing curiosity, we're testing personality. And a fourth thing which works for marketing is urgency. If you have a deadline, or if you have an upcoming event, you have doors closing, you have a numeric scarcity of your product or openings in your coaching program or what have you, you can say that. And actually, people claim that they don't like marketing emails, but I've seen in every test that I've done, those things when you say 2 days left, or this closes today, or final warning, that little precursor increases the open rates and usually click-through rates, because people say, oh crap, I need to get on this. If they were interested at all, ever, they'll want to open that. So those are all things that you should test. And I think not only that, but all things that you should kind of rotate through to whatever degree makes sense, to keep variety, keep some spice in your campaigns, and to make sure your readers don't get bored. If they feel like that you're being predictable, they'll tune out. They're more likely to tune out. Oh, one more thing, and that's news. If you can tie in a news story, there's curiosity in that, because you want to try and tell a story that's not being told by anyone else. You know, Donald Trump is in everybody's inbox right now because there's a lot of stories about that. I saw one this morning that said, breaking news, wife won't hold hand. So is that about Trump? I don't know, but it seems like it could be. So if you can tie in news stories, most people will be interested in that if it's topical to the reason they subscribe to you, because everybody is curious about what's happening in the news, and big stories that impact them will matter. So those are some ideas that I wanted to share with you. Check us out, emailcopybots.com, and we'll talk soon.